The moment the judge asked my husband to state his relationship to the child, Marcus Whitfield stood up in that courtroom, pointed a shaking finger at our 7-year-old son sitting beside me, and said the word "bastard" loud enough that the court reporter's fingers froze over her keyboard. Every head turned. My son's small hand tightened around mine, and I watched the man I had loved for 9 years destroy himself in front of strangers, not knowing that the very file sitting on the clerk's desk would soon make his face drain of all color. If you believe in kindness, in forgiveness, in the idea that hope can survive even our darkest days, I'd love for you to like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs a little light today, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like this one remind us that truth has a way of finding daylight, no matter how long it hides. My name is Renata Hollis, and 3 years ago I never could have imagined sitting in a family courtroom in Ohio, listening to my husband try to strip away my son's inheritance rights by claiming he wasn't really ours. Marcus and I had married when Caleb was 4, after his father, my first husband Theo, died in a highway accident on a rainy October morning. Marcus had been Theo's closest friend, a steady, quiet man who mowed our lawn without being asked and taught Caleb how to ride a bike in the church parking lot. I married him because he made grief feel survivable, because he looked at my son like he already loved him, and because I believed, foolishly perhaps, that love built on comfort could grow as strong as love built on passion. For the first few years, it did seem strong. Marcus worked at a mid-sized accounting firm downtown, and I taught 3rd grade at Willowbrook Elementary. We were not wealthy, but we were stable, and stability after loss feels like a miracle. Caleb called him Dad by the time he was 6, and Marcus never once corrected him. But somewhere in our 3rd year of marriage, something shifted. Marcus began working later, speaking less, flinching whenever Caleb ran to hug him after school. I told myself it was stress. I told myself men grieve differently, that maybe the accounting firm's numbers were finally catching up with him. I did not want to believe that the warmth I married was cooling into something colder and more calculating. The unraveling began the day my great-aunt Vivian passed away. Vivian had never married, never had children of her own, and had spent her final years devoted to genealogy, tracing our family line back through 3 states and 2 centuries. When her will was read, it revealed she had left a modest trust, nearly $200,000, specifically to the biological descendants of the Hollis and Ashworth lines, naming Caleb explicitly as her intended beneficiary because he carried Theo's bloodline forward. Marcus sat beside me at the reading, and I felt his body go rigid. Afterward, in the parking lot, he asked me quietly whether the money would be held in trust until Caleb turned 18, and who would manage it. I said I would, as Caleb's mother. He said nothing else that day, but something in his eyes had changed, like a door quietly closing. Within 2 months, Marcus filed for divorce. I was blindsided, but even more blindsided by what came next. He petitioned the court not just for separation, but for a declaration disputing his legal parental role regarding Caleb, and in doing so, he began questioning the trust distribution, arguing that since he had informally co-parented Caleb, he deserved oversight or partial control of funds meant for my son's future. His lawyer, a sharp, expensive man named Dorian Kessler, built an argument suggesting ambiguity in the biological parentage never existed, and yet, cruelly, they tried to imply otherwise to confuse the estate proceedings, hoping to delay everything long enough to negotiate a settlement in Marcus's favor. It was a desperate, ugly strategy, and I did not fully understand how desperate until we were standing in that courtroom. The days leading up to the hearing were the hardest of my life. Caleb, sensing tension he couldn't name, started having nightmares again, the kind he'd had after Theo died. He would wake up asking if Dad was leaving because he'd done something wrong. I held him through those nights, rocking him the way I had when he was a baby, whispering that none of this was his fault, that grown-up problems were never a child's burden to carry. I went back to therapy myself, something I had abandoned after Theo's death, because I needed to find steadiness for my son even when I felt none for myself. My sister Odette flew in from Denver to help, sitting with me at the kitchen table until midnight some nights, going through paperwork, reminding me that surviving Theo's death had already proven I was stronger than I believed. What none of us knew, not even Marcus's own attorney, was that Aunt Vivian, in her meticulous genealogical research, had uncovered something years earlier and quietly filed it with the county records office as part of establishing rightful heirs. She had commissioned a formal parentage and lineage verification, standard practice for large trust distributions, to preempt exactly the kind of dispute Marcus was now trying to create. That file sat waiting in the court record, requested weeks earlier by my own attorney, a calm and thorough woman named Priya Whitcomb, though of course she never discussed its contents with me beforehand, only assured me the truth would hold. So when Marcus stood in that courtroom, red-faced and unraveling, and called my son a bastard in an attempt to argue that Caleb existed in some legal gray area that justified his financial claims, the judge, a stern but fair woman named Judge Colette Marsh, did not react with the outrage I expected. She simply asked the clerk to bring forward the verified county documentation already entered into evidence. The room went silent as she read aloud, slowly, deliberately, that the file confirmed Caleb's full legal and biological parentage as the son of Theo Hollis and myself, verified through hospital birth records, paternity acknowledgement signed by Theo before his death, and Vivian's own supplementary genealogical documentation cross-referenced with state records. There was no ambiguity. There never had been. Marcus's entire argument, the foundation of his case, collapsed in front of him. I watched the color drain from his face as Judge Marsh continued, noting that not only was his claim baseless, but that his public statement calling a minor child a bastard in open court, in the child's presence, would be noted in the record and could be considered when determining any future contact arrangements. Dorian Kessler, his own attorney, looked as stunned as everyone else, quietly closing his folder as if trying to disappear. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For a man who had spent months constructing careful, cold arguments, he had nothing left to say, because the truth, documented and undeniable, had simply outpaced his lies. I would love to say I felt triumphant in that moment, but mostly I felt exhausted, and heartbroken for Caleb, who had heard his stepfather call him something ugly in front of strangers. I pulled my son close as the hearing concluded, and Judge Marsh, before dismissing the courtroom, looked directly at Caleb with a gentleness I will never forget, telling him that he was loved, that he belonged fully and completely to his family, and that nothing said that day changed that truth. The weeks that followed were not easy. Divorce rarely is, even when clarity replaces confusion. Marcus moved out permanently, and the trust proceeded as Vivian intended, held safely for Caleb's future education. But something unexpected happened almost a year later. Marcus reached out, not through lawyers this time, but through a handwritten letter, admitting that fear and financial desperation, compounded by his own father's abandonment when he was young, had twisted him into someone he didn't recognize. He wasn't asking for money or reconciliation as my husband. He was asking, humbly, whether he might someday earn back a small place in Caleb's life, not as a father, but as someone who once genuinely loved him and regretted causing him pain. I did not respond immediately. I spoke with my therapist, with Odette, and eventually, gently, with Caleb himself, now old enough to understand more than I wished he had to. To my surprise, my son, with the resilient grace children often carry more easily than adults, said he didn't hate Marcus, he just wanted to know why. That single question guided us toward a slow, supervised reconciliation, built not on erasing what happened, but on Marcus proving through consistent, patient actions that he was capable of change. It took over a year of small gestures, birthday cards, quiet Saturday visits at the park with a family counselor present, before trust began rebuilding in fragile, honest layers. Today, Caleb is 10, thriving, curious, kind-hearted despite everything he witnessed. Marcus is not his father, and never will be again in the way he once was, but he is someone Caleb can wave to at a little league game without flinching, someone who sends encouraging notes before spelling tests. Forgiveness did not erase what happened in that courtroom, but it made space for something healthier to grow in its place, proving that even our worst moments don't have to define the rest of our story. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear it. Before we go, tell me in the comments what forgiveness means to you, or share a moment when the truth finally set something right in your own life. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Our community grows stronger every time we choose to believe in second chances, and I'm grateful you spent this time with our family story today.